You know, sometimes life gives you second chances, but not the kind you dream about. The kind that shakes your soul, the kind that makes you wonder if fate is trying to fix something or punish you for what you broke. I never thought I'd see his face again. Not after all these years. Not after what I did to him. And certainly not like this, standing on my porch, holding the papers that could take away my home. Because you see, the man who once asked me to marry him 50 years ago is now the man who can decide whether I lose everything. I know that sounds unbelievable, but let me tell you how it happened. It was a Thursday morning, gray and quiet, the kind of morning when the world feels heavy. I had just opened a letter from the bank, another notice. The red print at the top made my heart drop. Final notice. They were going to take my house if I didn't pay in 30 days. That house wasn't just walls and wood. It was my entire life, where I'd raised my daughter, where my husband and I had our last Christmas, where every corner held a memory. After my husband passed away, things fell apart. I tried to stay strong. I tried to manage everything alone. The bills, the repairs, the loneliness. But grief has a way of sneaking into everything. It dulls your mind, slows your steps, and before you realize it, life is slipping through your fingers. I sold my jewelry, my husband's car, even the old piano in the living room. Still, it wasn't enough. Then my daughter, Lisa, said, "Mom, there's this real estate company buying homes around here. They offer fast money, and you could start fresh somewhere smaller." At first, I refused. This house was all I had left of the man I loved. But when the next notice came, with that same awful red ink, I knew I had no choice. So, I agreed to meet the buyer. They said he was the head of the company himself. Very successful, very private, the agent told me on the phone. I didn't care who he was. I just wanted the meeting over with. That afternoon, a black car pulled up in front of my gate. It was sleek, expensive, out of place in my quiet, worn-out neighborhood. And then he stepped out. Tall, gray hair, sharp suit, calm eyes. I almost didn't breathe. It was him, Robert Turner, the boy I had loved when I was 17. The boy who promised me the world before I threw it away. For a second, my heart didn't know whether to run or stop beating altogether. Do you ever have that moment when time folds in on itself? When you're 68 but suddenly 17 again, standing in front of the same person you broke all those years ago. He looked at me, polite but distant, like a man meeting a stranger. He introduced himself, shook my hand, and started talking about property values and redevelopment plans. His voice was steady, professional. Mine wasn't. I could barely hear what he said. My pulse was too loud. Finally, I interrupted him. "Robert Turner, right? From Glenview High." He paused mid-sentence. His eyes met mine, really met them this time, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of recognition. "Maggie," he said quietly. Just that. My name. And suddenly 50 years collapsed into that one word. My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to apologize right there, to tell him how sorry I was, how life turned out differently than I imagined. But I didn't. I just stood there, like a fool, clutching the papers that might sign my home away. He didn't mention our past. Not a single word. Instead, he walked through my living room, looking at the old furniture, the framed photos, the fireplace my husband built by hand. "This was your husband's place?" he finally asked. I nodded. "Yes, he passed 5 years ago." He just gave a small nod back. "I'm sorry." It wasn't pity. It wasn't even sympathy. It was restraint, like a man guarding a door inside his heart. Then he said something strange. "I can help you, Maggie, but you might not like the terms." What did that even mean? My heart skipped. Was this business or revenge? I wanted to ask, but my pride wouldn't let me. So I smiled politely and told him I'd think about it. After he left, I sat on the couch, staring at the dust floating in the sunlight. The silence felt heavier than it had in years. Could it really be him? After all this time? Why was he the one buying my neighborhood? Was it fate or punishment? That night I didn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment, his face, his voice, the way he looked at the old family photos on my shelf. And I remembered the day everything ended. It was summer 1975. We were supposed to run away together. We had it all planned, 2 suitcases, a bus ticket, and a promise. But my parents found out. My father said if I left, I'd be disowned. No money, no college, nothing. I was scared. So instead of meeting Robert at the station, I sent him a letter my mother helped me write. Cold, cruel, final. I don't love you anymore. Please don't come for me. He never replied. I never saw him again. Until today. The next morning, my phone rang. Good morning, Maggie. It's Robert. May I stop by again? I'd like to talk. His voice was calm, businesslike, but my hands shook. I said yes. When he came, we sat on the porch, sipping coffee. The sun was bright, but the air between us felt uncertain, heavy with what wasn't being said. He talked about helping me restructure the debt and finding a fair solution. I nodded, pretending to understand. But inside, all I wanted was to ask why. Why me? Why now? Finally, I couldn't hold it anymore. Robert, I said softly, why are you doing this? You could buy any house in this town. Why mine? He didn't answer at first. He just looked at me, really looked. Then he said something that sent a chill down my spine. I didn't come here by accident, Maggie. I blinked. What do you mean? He sighed, leaned back, and said quietly, you don't know the truth about what happened 50 years ago. For a second, I thought I misheard him. The truth? What truth? I knew why I left him. Because my parents made me. There was no mystery in that. But he kept his eyes on me, calm but piercing. Your father, he wasn't just against me because I was poor. He made sure I never came back. He lied to both of us. I froze. Lied? About what? He shook his head. Not here. Not yet. Then he stood up, buttoned his jacket, and said, I'll show you tomorrow. There's something you need to see. Before I could ask what, he walked to his car. And as he drove away, all I could do was stand there, gripping the edge of the porch, my heart pounding like it hadn't in years. That night, I sat by the window again, staring at the empty street, wondering what he meant. What could he possibly show me? And why did his voice sound so sad? Do you think people change after 50 years? Or do they just learn to hide their pain better? I wanted to believe he came back out of kindness, that maybe deep down he still cared. But another part of me feared he wanted to make me pay. Either way, I knew one thing. The next day, when he came back, my life would never be the same. The following morning, his car pulled up again. He stepped out carrying a small leather folder. Old, worn, like something that had traveled with him a long time. He didn't say much, just sat down across from me at the kitchen table. I kept this for years, he said, because I never understood why you left. And then one day I found the answer. He slid the folder across the table. Inside was a single yellowed letter, the paper soft with age. I recognized the handwriting instantly. It was my mother's. My hands began to shake before I even opened it. You should read it, Robert said quietly. I think you deserve to know what really happened. And just like that, every wall I had built around my heart began to crumble. Because whatever was written in that letter, I knew it would change everything I thought I knew about my past, about him, and about the life I chose. Do you think you could face a truth that's been buried for 50 years? Because I thought I could. But when I read that letter, I realized some truths don't set you free. They break you before they heal you. When I held that letter in my hands, I swear I could feel time pressing down on me. The paper trembled between my fingers, thin and fragile, like the bridge between who I was and who I had become. For a moment, I couldn't open it. I just stared at Robert, his calm face, his steady eyes. He wasn't angry anymore. That somehow scared me even more. You'll want to sit down, he said. So I did. I sat at the same kitchen table where I'd eaten breakfast every morning for 40 years, not knowing that everything I believed about my past was a lie. The first line hit me like a train. It wasn't even the words, it was the handwriting. Perfect, neat, the same way my mother used to write grocery lists. And then I read it aloud. Dear Robert, Maggie has decided to move on with her life. She no longer wishes to see you. Please respect her wishes and do not contact her again. She's engaged to someone more suitable for her future. My voice cracked. I felt the air leave my lungs. I never wrote this, I whispered. Robert nodded slowly. I know. I found it years later in an old file. Your father gave it to me himself, the day after you didn't show up. I looked at him, stunned. My father? He gave you that? Yes, he said. He came to my work. Told me you wanted nothing to do with me. He said you were marrying someone else, and that if I tried to find you, he'd make sure I regretted it. For a long time, I couldn't speak. I remembered that morning, how my father had locked me in my room after he found the suitcase. How my mother sat on the bed and said, "It's for your own good, Maggie." And now I finally understood what she meant. I covered my face with my hands. 50 years, Robert, I said. 50 years believing I hurt you. I thought I was the coward. I thought I broke your heart. He gave a small, sad smile. You didn't, Maggie. They did. But I let them. I believed that letter. I left without fighting for you. He looked down at his hands, strong, weathered, clean, but restless. I told myself it was for the best. That maybe you were happier that way. But I never stopped wondering why it ended the way it did. I wish I could tell you I felt relief. That knowing the truth made me feel lighter. But it didn't. It hurt worse, because now the guilt had nowhere to hide. It wasn't just about what my parents did. It was about the life that could have been. The children we never had. The home we never built. The years that slipped through our fingers because two people decided they knew better than we did. Have you ever realized too late that your whole life could have gone differently? If only you'd known one truth sooner? Because that's exactly how I felt. We sat in silence for a long time. The clock ticked on the wall, tick, 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 each second reminding me of all the ones I'd lost. Finally, I asked, why show me this now? After all these years? He leaned back, thoughtful. Because I didn't want you to keep blaming yourself. I know what guilt can do. It eats at you until there's nothing left. Then he added, softer. And because when I saw your name on the property list, something in me said it was time. Maybe fate wanted to finish what it started. I laughed quietly through tears. Or maybe fate has a cruel sense of humor. He smiled for the first time that day. Maybe. But I've learned that sometimes it gives you what you need, not what you expect. We talked for hours. About life, loss, what had happened after we went our separate ways. He told me he never married. Said he tried once, but it didn't feel right. He built his company from scratch, started as a construction worker, then bought his own tools, then his own crew. I guess I was trying to prove something, he said. To your father, maybe. To myself. That I was worth something. And he was. He had become everything my parents said he'd never be. While I had done everything they told me to. Married the man they approved of. Lived the life they considered respectable. And yet, I never felt complete. I looked at him and thought, how different would my life have been if I'd just gotten on that bus? When he left that evening, I stood by the window again, watching his car disappear down the road. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not regret, not sadness, hope. But it scared me too, because hope is fragile at my age. It's like holding a glass ornament, beautiful, but one wrong move, and it shatters. That night, I kept thinking, could it really be possible to start again? At 68? Or was I just being foolish? What would you have thought if you were me? Would you open your heart again to the same person you once lost? Or would you be too afraid of losing them twice? The next day, he called. Maggie, can we meet again? There's something else you should know. Something else? Hadn't I learned enough already? Still, I agreed. And when he arrived, he didn't come empty-handed. He brought a small wooden box, wrapped in a faded blue ribbon. This belonged to my mother, he said. I think she wanted you to have it. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a photo, the two of us, from the summer of '75. We were standing by the lake, my arms around his neck, his smile wide and careless. On the back, in his handwriting, were 4 words for when we're old. I felt tears welling up again. You kept this? He nodded. I kept everything, Maggie, even the bus ticket. And there it was, tucked inside the box. A yellowed, fragile ticket for the 6:30 bus to Chicago. Never used. That night, I sat on my porch with the box on my lap, the sun setting behind the trees, painting everything in gold. And I realized sometimes life circles back. Sometimes it doesn't want you to regret. It wants you to remember. Lisa came over later that evening. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked. "You've been quiet lately." I smiled and said, "Just thinking about old times." She noticed the box and frowned. "Who gave you that?" I hesitated for a second, then said softly, "An old friend. Someone I heard a long time ago." Lisa looked curious. "Are you sure it's a good idea to dig up the past?" That question stayed with me after she left. Was it? Was I ready to open old wounds? Or maybe to let them finally heal? 2 days later, Robert called again. He said he had a proposal, a real one this time. "Not business," he said. "Something different. Can I come by?" When he arrived, he looked nervous, which surprised me. I had never seen him nervous before. He took a deep breath and said, "I've been thinking. You don't deserve to lose your home. Not after everything you've been through. So I made some arrangements." I frowned. "Arrangements?" He smiled slightly. "Let's just say I might own the bank that's been threatening you." I blinked. "What?" He nodded. "I bought it out last year. Small branch, easy to acquire. I didn't even know you lived here then. But now, I can make sure you don't lose this place." My first instinct was pride. "No, Robert, I can't let you do that," I said. "I don't want charity." He raised an eyebrow. "It's not charity. It's repayment. For all the years you thought you were the villain." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. My throat tightened. Because deep down, it wasn't about the money. It was about forgiveness, his and mine. Still, I told him no. He just smiled and said, "Then let me help another way. You can't stop me from that." And he didn't say what he meant. Not until later. That evening, after he left, I found an envelope under my front door. No name, no address. Just one word written on the front, "Tomorrow." Inside was a folded note, handwritten in the same neat style as the letter my mother had written. But this time, the words were his. "Tomorrow, meet me at the old lake, the place where everything began. I'll be waiting at sunset." My heart skipped. The old lake, our lake. The place we said goodbye without ever really saying it. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Was this madness? Two old souls chasing ghosts? Or was it fate, giving us one last chance to say what we never could? That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing his voice in my head, calm, deep, steady. And I kept thinking of that young girl I once was, the one who ran from love out of fear. Would she even recognize the woman I'd become? Would she be proud of me? I don't know. But I knew one thing. When tomorrow came, I was going to that lake. Not for him. For me. Because sometimes the only way to forgive yourself is to look the past straight in the eye and stop running. So when the sun began to set the next day, I drove out there, the same dusty road, the same curve where the trees opened to the water. And when I saw him standing there, waiting, my heart knew this wasn't about the house anymore. It wasn't about debts or banks or even the letter. It was about something much bigger. And as the wind carried the scent of the lake and the golden light fell over us both, I realized the past wasn't done with us yet. The drive to the lake felt longer than it had 50 years ago. Or maybe it was just my nerves making every mile stretch endlessly. I kept gripping the steering wheel, as if holding on tight could prevent the flood of memories from washing over me. The old road, the familiar bends, the whisper of trees in the wind. Everything was just as it had been, yet everything had changed. Do you remember the places from your youth that felt sacred? The ones that held all your laughter, your secrets, your first love? I did, and this was one of them. I parked at the edge of the gravel path, heart hammering like I was 17 again. The lake lay ahead, smooth and golden in the sunset. And there he was, Robert Turner. He stood at the same spot where we had once promised each other forever. Not a word. Just the quiet, steady presence of the man I had loved, lost, and blamed myself for decades. For a moment, neither of us moved. It felt like the world had shrunk, and all that existed was the lake, the light, and us. I swallowed hard. What are we doing here? I whispered, more to myself than to him. He smiled faintly, but there was a weight in his eyes. Facing the past, he said softly. and maybe giving us a chance to finish what we started. Do you ever meet someone after years apart, and the first thing you notice isn't their face, but the way they carry themselves? The way they move, the subtle gestures, the little habits that somehow survive decades? That was him. The slight tilt of his head when he studied me, the way he ran a hand through his silver hair, the careful patience in every step. I felt my chest tighten. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw myself into his arms and never let go. Instead, I stayed frozen. "Do you remember this place?" he asked, voice soft, almost a whisper. I nodded, though tears threatened to spill. How could I forget? This was our lake. He took a deep breath and glanced at the water. "I never came back after that summer," he said. I couldn't, not knowing if you'd ever forgive me, or if I'd even recognize you. I wanted to speak, to explain, but the words tangled in my throat. Instead, I asked the only thing I could. Why now? Why come back after all this time? He turned to face me fully, because sometimes life doesn't wait, and sometimes you have to see the truth for yourself. We sat down on the worn wooden dock, our legs dangling over the edge. The water rippled beneath us, reflecting the colors of the sunset, and we didn't speak for a long time. Do you know that silence that isn't awkward? The one filled with unspoken words, regrets, memories, and emotions too heavy to voice? That was our silence. Finally, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out the yellowed bus ticket from that summer. He held it out to me. "Do you remember this?" he asked. I swallowed, trembling. I thought I lost it." He shook his head. "No, I kept it all these years. Every note, every photo, every memory. I couldn't let go. And somehow, I think you didn't either. Do you ever realize that someone you lost never really leaves your life? That they linger, like a shadow behind every choice, every failure, every quiet moment? That was him. And that was me. We spoke then, slowly, carefully, as if testing the waters. I told him about my husband, my daughter, the life I had built. He listened quietly, never interrupting, never judging. And then he told me about his life, the work, the struggles, the lonely nights spent wondering what could have been. At some point he said, "I forgave them, Maggie. Your parents. And I forgive you too." I couldn't speak for a moment. Forgiveness. After 50 years. Then came the first smile of the evening, small, hesitant, but real. "You've changed," he said. "I've changed too," I admitted. And in that moment I realized maybe we weren't just two old people meeting by a lake. Maybe we were two souls finally learning to heal. He reached out, gently, and brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. "May I?" he asked. I nodded, and for the first time in decades, I felt safe in his hands. We talked until the stars appeared. He asked questions about my daughter, my life, the little things I had hidden even from myself. I asked him about his regrets, his fears, the moments he had missed me most. And he told me honestly, openly, vulnerably. Do you know what it feels like to hear someone speak the words you've been longing for 50 years? To hear them say they never stopped thinking about you? It was overwhelming. I laughed and cried at the same time, and every tear washed away a bit of the old guilt I had carried. But then he hesitated. His eyes darkened slightly. "I need to tell you something else," he said. My heart lurched. Was this the truth I wasn't ready for? Had fate brought me here for a lesson I didn't want to learn? He took a deep breath. "I bought the bank that's been threatening your home," he said slowly. My mouth went dry. "You what?" He smiled faintly. "Not to control you, not to embarrass you, to protect you. You should never have had to fight alone." I stared at him, speechless. Part of me wanted to push him away, pride, fear, disbelief. Part of me wanted to throw myself into his arms. Do you know that moment when you realize someone has been waiting, silently, all these years, just for you? That's exactly how I felt. We didn't leave the dock that night until it was nearly dark. The lake reflected the moonlight, and I could see our reflections, two older, wiser people finally learning to face the past. Before he left, he said softly, "Maggie, can we try again? Not for the past, not for guilt. Just us." I froze. "Try again." After 50 years. I swallowed and whispered, I think I'd like that. He smiled, and I could see the weight of decades lift from his shoulders, and from mine. But even as I drove home that night, my mind raced. Could it really be this simple? Could two people hurt by the same circumstances finally find happiness? The answer, I realized, would come slowly. One day, one choice, one step at a time. And yet, I couldn't shake a small fear. Fate had brought him back, yes. But what if life had one more lesson left for me? What if, after all this, the past had one more secret? Would I survive it? Or would it take everything, including the fragile hope we had just found? I woke before dawn, my chest tight, my mind buzzing. Robert would be coming back today. I hadn't slept well. The memories of that summer 50 years ago, the dock, the lake, his smile, and the heartbreak, they all pressed down on me. Do you ever wake up with a mix of hope and fear so intense that your chest feels like it might explode? That was me. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the pale light sneaking through the curtains. I could hear the faint hum of the town waking up, birds calling, leaves rustling outside my window. And yet, my world felt completely silent, as if it was holding its breath. 50 years. Can you imagine living 50 years carrying a piece of your heart, knowing it belongs to someone else? I had buried it, I thought. But time had only layered over it, not erased it. When Robert arrived, he didn't knock. He simply stepped into my home, the same calm presence I remembered from youth, and handed me a small envelope. It was lighter than I expected, fragile, almost like it contained air rather than paper. This, he said, is the truth. About us. About why everything happened the way it did. I took it, fingers trembling, and slowly opened it. Inside were letters, documents, and photographs I had never seen. And the first words made my blood run cold. To Robert Turner, your mother never wanted you with Maggie. She intercepted letters, altered messages, and convinced Maggie to leave. She made sure nothing could ever bring you together. My hand shook. My chest tightened. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. I looked up at him, searching his eyes. Was it really true? You're telling me it wasn't me? It wasn't my choice. I whispered, barely audible. He shook his head slowly. No, Maggie. Your parents made it impossible. And I believed their lies. I let them win. 50 years of guilt, shame, and self-blame washed over me. All that time, blaming myself for a choice I didn't truly make. Can you imagine carrying that kind of weight for half a century? Do you feel the ache even when the world tells you to move on? He handed me another letter, this one in my own handwriting. From the day I had decided to leave him. Robert, I am sorry. I can't go with you. My parents, they won't allow it. I am scared and confused. Please understand. I hadn't remembered writing it. I had believed it was the right choice, safety, obedience, survival. And yet it had destroyed both our lives. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to throw the letter into the lake and erase everything. Robert looked at me with those steady, kind eyes. I never stopped thinking about you, Maggie. Not for one day. Even when I tried to move on, you were always there. Do you know that piercing ache when someone says the words you've longed for your entire life? That's how I felt. And tears came, unbidden, streaming down my face. We spent the morning sifting through the letters, documents, and photographs. Each one revealed more layers of manipulation and deceit. 50 years of misunderstanding, lies, and missed opportunities. I saw my parents' influence in every intercepted letter. Robert's family silence, his uncertainty, his missed chances. All of it created a wall that neither of us could scale. And then came a photograph I had never seen before. It was taken on the dock that summer, just before we were torn apart. Robert and I, smiling, unaware of the storm that would separate us. But in the corner, almost invisible, stood my father, watching, silent, controlling, menacing. I gasped. You saw him that day? Robert nodded. I did. And I realized then, I didn't know what he was planning, but he ensured I couldn't fight for you. Can a parent really control a life so completely? Apparently, yes. And for decades, we had lived under that shadow. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the photographs into the lake. I wanted to erase 50 years of pain in one motion. But Robert did something unexpected. He reached across the table, took my hands, warm and steady, and said, "Maggie, none of that matters now. We have the truth. And now we have a choice." I looked at him, eyes wide. "A choice?" "Yes," he said softly. "To forgive, to love, to finally be together. If you want to." 50 years of waiting, of longing, and here it was, a choice. Even as I nodded, my heart hesitated. Could we really rebuild what 50 years had tried to destroy? Could I really trust the second chance? I looked into his eyes and saw patience, kindness, and unwavering love. And slowly I realized, yes, we could try. "Do you trust me, Maggie?" he asked. I paused. And then, with trembling certainty, I whispered, "Yes." Then he told me about the bank, the one threatening my home, the debts I thought I could never escape. He had bought it. "Your home is safe," he said. "No one will take it from you. Not now. Not ever." Tears streamed down my face, not from sorrow but from relief. And hope. A hope I had thought impossible. We went to the lake that afternoon, sitting on the dock, our feet brushing the water. The breeze carried the faint smell of pine and earth. We talked, reminisced, laughed. I could feel the years melting away, the lost decades shrinking until it was only us again. Do you ever meet someone and feel like no time has passed, even though decades have? That was him. That was us. And yet, a shadow lingered. Could we forgive our families fully? Could we leave the past behind completely? I could feel the tension, the uncertainty pressing down. But Robert held my hand and said, "Maggie, whatever comes next, we face it together. No more lies, no more secrets, just us." And I believed him. For the first time in 50 years, I believed. We stayed at the lake until the moon rose high, silver light reflecting on the rippling water. I thought about Lisa, about my house, about the years of lost time. And for the first time, I believed in second chances. I believed in the possibility of happiness. But even as hope warmed me, I knew life might still test us one last time. Would the past reach out again? Or would we finally be free? And as I looked at Robert holding my hand, I felt a quiet certainty. Whatever comes next, we would face it together. I woke up that morning with a strange sense of calm. The lake outside my window was misty, gray, the water still reflecting the dawn sky. I could hear the distant hum of the town waking up, birds beginning their morning song, leaves trembling with the soft wind. And yet, my mind was focused entirely on him, Robert. After 50 years of waiting, of longing, of half-lived dreams and heartache, we were finally here. Together. The word itself felt strange, unfamiliar, and yet perfect. Can you imagine carrying love for half a century, wondering if fate would ever let it bloom? I could feel it in my chest, a warm, steady glow, almost like breathing sunlight through my veins. Breakfast that morning was quiet, almost ritualistic. We made coffee together, the aroma rich and familiar, like a memory I didn't know I still had. We didn't speak much at first, there was no need. The silence was comfortable, filled with understanding and shared history. Later, we walked through the garden behind my house. The roses were blooming, the air thick with their perfume. The sight reminded me of summers long ago, when life seemed endless and our hearts were lighter. Robert paused to smell a red bloom, smiling softly. "You remember this?" he asked, brushing a petal with his fingers. I nodded, laughing softly, the sound catching in my throat. "How could I forget? You tried to impress me by pretending you knew every flower by name." He chuckled. "I still don't, but I wanted you to think I did. Do you remember the little games of youth? The ones that seemed so trivial at the time, but decades later, every detail comes flooding back? I could feel those moments, tiny threads stitching us together across time. That afternoon, the real challenge began. We had to face the past fully, the debts, the family, the lies. Robert had already bought the bank, securing my home, but the emotional weight was heavier than any financial burden. I had to confront my parents, or what remained of their memory, and finally forgive them. We started with the letters, reading each one aloud, dissecting every manipulation, every lie. It was painful but necessary. I could feel anger rising, but also relief. Can you imagine uncovering the truth about your life, about the choices that shaped you, and realizing it wasn't your fault? It's terrifying and liberating. Later, Robert took me by the hand and said, "Let's go to the lake. One last time before we truly begin again." We drove in silence, the town slowly disappearing behind us, replaced by fields, trees, and the winding road that led to our dock. The air smelled of wet grass and distant pine. I could hear the soft rush of the water against the shore. The lake looked the same as it had decades ago, timeless and eternal. We sat on the dock, our legs dangling over the edge, toes just touching the cold water. I watched him, the man I had loved and lost, and now loved again. I wanted to ask, is this real? But the question was unnecessary. It was real. Do you ever think about all the time we lost? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. All the time, he replied. But it doesn't matter now. We're here. We have each other. Finally, can you imagine feeling the weight of decades lift off your shoulders in a single moment? That's what it felt like. The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. We stayed there hand in hand, sharing memories, tears, and laughter. I told him about the little moments I had remembered, the first time I laughed at his jokes, the evenings we spent reading by the fire, the warmth of his hand in mine when the world felt cold. He shared his memories too, the times he had almost given up, the nights he had cried alone, the moments he had dreamed of this reunion. Do you know what it's like to hear your own feelings mirrored back to you after decades apart? It's like seeing your soul reflected in someone else. It's terrifying, and yet it feels like home. That night, as darkness fell, we lit a small fire near the dock. The flames danced, casting golden light on our faces. We sat close, listening to the crackle, watching the sparks rise into the sky. The world felt small, intimate, and yet infinite. "I can't believe we're here," I whispered. "After everything, it really worked out." Robert smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "It always would have," he said. "We just had to survive the world long enough to find each other again." Do you ever feel like life tests you over and over until it finally allows you to be happy? I felt that tonight. Every challenge, every heartbreak, every mistake had led us to this moment. We talked about the future, quietly, tenderly. No rush, no expectations. We planned small things first. Dinners together, walks by the lake, evenings reading by the fire. But in those small plans, we found the joy that had been missing for so long. Can you imagine building a life anew after 50 years apart? It's daunting and exhilarating. Every day felt like a miracle. The following days were filled with reconciliations. I called Lisa, explained everything, shared the truth. She cried and then hugged me and said, "I'm glad you finally have your happiness, Mom. You deserve it." Robert and I visited the few family members still alive, extended forgiveness, and found peace. We were no longer prisoners of the past. We were free. Even simple moments became magical. We walked through the garden, planted new roses, and I laughed when Robert tried to name them all incorrectly. We shared dinners, cooked together, and reminisced about the summers of our youth. And I realized, as I leaned against him one evening watching the sunset, happiness isn't found in grand gestures or fleeting triumphs. It's in quiet moments, in forgiveness, in choosing love every single day. The years ahead promised challenges, they always would. But for the first time, I knew we could face them together. Do you ever think about the time we lost? I asked him one evening. He squeezed my hand. All the time. But then I remember we still have every day ahead of us. And in that moment, I understood fully. Love isn't about timing. It's about courage, patience, and finally, the second chance we were given. We sat together, hand in hand, watching the moonlight shimmer on the lake. The world felt right again. I felt whole, and I knew, after all we had endured, this was just the beginning of the life we should have had all along.